So we had this baler in the back. So all of the no, 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 it's nothing crazy. But so all of the groceries come in these big cardboard boxes off the trucks, and then you load it into the inventory room in the back, and then you have all of these cardboard boxes left over. And we had this big machine called a baler that you would shove the boxes in, it would smash it up, and then it would wrap it with wire and make a bale, like a bale of hay, but a bale of cardboard. And then we would load it up on a pallet jack, and we had a
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a roundtable discussion covering a wide variety of topics from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Your hosts, Jason Thompson, John Naran, Jen Coons, and myself, Jim Driscoll, all live in different areas of the world, but work together in the same company. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others. You're stealing my line.
I know. No. Made a mocha this morning.
With the coffee maker?
Yeah, I got some chili chocolate, and I brewed a shot over a square of chocolate. So the chocolate melted as the shot brewed on top of it.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It's quite delicious.
I might have to try that because I've got the Nespresso in addition to the Keurig.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, I never thought of doing that. Just getting a little piece of chocolate, dump it in the cup, and then just brew the coffee over it.
Yeah. It adds a whole new dimension. I went with like a chili chocolate, so it's got a little bit of spice to it as well. It's nice.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So John, I keep going past the street foods, and for some reason haven't watched it yet. So it keeps calling my name.
It's probably the algorithm. The algorithm's calling your name.
Yes. So it will be soon.
Do you have an Echo in your office with you?
I do.
The Echo heard you talking then.
Is that what it is?
It had to.
Yeah. Something like that. So what's going on?
Such a low energy start to this episode.
It'll get moving.
It's real. It's authentic.
It's because you're not on camera. We're having a hard time connecting here.
Am I not?
No.
No, your camera's turned off.
Oh, weird. I actually see myself.
We don't. I saw you a minute ago, and then something.
Oh wait,
changed it.
Does this work?
There you go.
Yeah, that works.
Odd. I'm not getting, because I have, an external monitor with a camera and then my laptop monitor, and they both are on right now. And the preview I'm getting is the opposite to what you're seeing.
Really?
So I have no idea why.
That is bizarre.
It is bizarre and a bit scary.
So when you come into the green room area, like you'll see each item that's selected. So like right now, like in the little block for you, I hover over the camera and I see that it's got the Logitech webcam picked. So I'm wondering if, it might have been something where it may have initially defaulted to the one and now it's switched over to the other. Because that's what happened to me with the microphone a couple weeks ago.
Very odd. I did just upgrade to the latest version of Chrome, which was just released.
Okay.
And then it all went haywire.
I need to do that. I was upgrading browsers yesterday. I haven't used Firefox in forever, but I saw a couple posts about Firefox's new privacy settings. So I wanted to download the new version of Firefox and go through the onboarding flow yesterday. So that was interesting. Everyone's getting privacy heavy.
Yep.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how easy it was to block. So the new Firefox by default blocks all trackers that use a third-party cookie, which shouldn't be the case anymore. But I will tell you that there are a handful of very, very large enterprise brands that are on Adobe Analytics. None of our clients,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of a sickness when you do this as a job. I don't know if you guys do this, but I tend to keep my debugger open or the network tab open on Chrome, and as I surf sites just for pleasure, I'm constantly looking at their analytics, and it's a sickness, but I do. And there are, and I'm not going to name names, a handful of very large brands that are on Adobe Analytics that are still running third-party cookies.
Ouch.
The new Firefox by default will absolutely block that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it's interesting. It also has this little shield icon that you can pop up, and it will tell you all of the known trackers that are on the page,
Mm-hmm.
and you can choose to right there individually block them or block them all. And it does it full out just blocks the call.
Do you notice that it makes the experience faster?
No,
The user experience? No.
right? It's negligible to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff. We maybe should track down a privacy expert. I've been writing about it a little bit in our weekly newsletter with Apple's ITP 2. I think they're up to 2.2 now or something. Lots of interesting stuff going on in the privacy space, and I'm just not qualified to talk about it at depth, but it is an interesting topic, and I know it's one that we've talked about a little bit in the past. And John, you had some thoughts on probably a good future conversation if we knew some privacy expert.
Yeah, I mean, well, why don't we throw it out there? For anybody who's listening, who, yeah, I mean, I know enough, for the job, but I like as you said, an expert would be really good to have somebody on. So we'll throw it out there if there's anybody who really knows the inner workings of all of this. Please reach out. We'd love to have you on and love to pick your brain about this.
Yeah, that would be cool. All right. So what are we? Rather than just talking about random topics, and John's saying we're low energy this morning. This afternoon. Well, it's early morning for me. I don't know what time it is in Bangkok. It's probably late at night.
9
All right.
p.m. Not too bad.
So you're just getting to dinner time.
Yeah, I guess so.
Didn't you say it wasn't? Didn't we do a recording once where you said in the summer it's so hot that like everyone stays inside until it gets really cool and then they go out?
Oh yeah, that's pretty much like a lot of yeah. I mean, you're either inside during the day or, but yeah, at night everything comes alive because the weather. But yeah, so yeah, it's not too late for sure.
Cool. All right, Jim. What are we doing today?
Okay, so I think the privacy conversation at the beginning actually serves as a really good segue. As things change, you need to grow, you need to adapt. So what I want to talk about today is, and we've touched on this in little bits in very old episodes, but how do you develop transferable skills? Because if you think about it, a job that is in high demand today can easily become obsolete in the future. As time progresses, industries can and will contract. Job automation has always been and always will be a threat to jobs, no matter the skill level. Every now and then you hear people screaming, the robots are coming to take our jobs. There's a grocery store chain near me that has like this, AI-powered little robot that constantly goes up and down the aisles looking for spills and notifies, the staff of problems and whatnot. But, if you think about it for us, as AI is becoming more and more of a reality, could our jobs, what we're used to doing, be a threat as well? So looking across industries, what are key transferable skills that people should really develop? How do they go about it? Because I think at some point in everyone's career, you're going to face that point where it's I can continue doing what I'm doing, but I'm becoming, the pond is becoming smaller and smaller, and I need to make a move.
As a side note, um, my first real well, yeah, my first real job where I had taxes taken out of my check at 15 was in a grocery store, and we did all sorts of messing around because I would go to school during the day and then work the like 7 to 11:30 p.m. shift, and there was much messing around. If we had robot cleaners in the grocery store, oh man, we would have had a heyday with that. That would have been amazing. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and there's lots of ways that we can take this, and it really affects all industries, and it's not really limited to AI or automation. It's as the landscape changes, jobs change, and we've seen it moving from a time where we were prepared to work in factories, and that was the thing, and there had to be a mental shift. We're seeing a really interesting thing here in Utah. I think from the just pure geography of the state, we have a very compact population center, which I think is true of many parts of the country, where most of the jobs and growth are happening in a really small sliver of the state. But then you have these other parts of the state that have historically been supported by things like coal and gas, oil, and there's a lot of struggle there, and there's a lot of people trying to keep hold of what has been historically the past. How can we maintain those jobs and support that? And I think that that's one of the biggest skills, or one of the biggest things that anybody can have, is not attaching to any one job or any one skill, because the minute you do that, I think it's a very weak foundation to be on, because things are changing so quickly, especially in the technology space. And as technology impacts what we do, whether it's AI or robots coming in to automate, the people that are willing to be adaptable and move to things that are opening up as other things are becoming automated, those are the ones that will thrive. And again, I don't think this is anything new. If we go back in history and study when the assembly line came in place, I'm sure that was scary and replaced a lot of jobs as we had a repeatable process, and that came into play. I'm sure there were similar conversations. It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall and go back in history and see how people were talking about, the assembly lines are going to take all of our jobs. I'm sure it's very similar to what we hear a lot today with the robots and AI are going to take our jobs. It didn't really happen, did it? I mean, yes, those jobs disappear, but new opportunities were created. And again, I think the biggest skill that people can have is being open to taking advantage of those new opportunities.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not implying that this is anything new. In fact, if anything, I looking back at the last 30 years alone, it seems like every 5 years or so, there's that big spike, the big fear mongering on the news, like, oh my God, these jobs are going away, or oh, this new
First
thing
of all,
is
the
going.
news sucks.
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
trust me, I've had that conversation with Suzanne many, many times. I'm like, at this point, the news is nothing but fear mongering in general. But fear mongering, it keeps you kind of in this state of constant fear, and you're scared to go out of the house. That being said, it feels like every 5 years or so, like they have the big story about the newest technology that's going to eliminate all of these jobs, and all of these people are scared. So yeah, it's definitely nothing new. I mean, it's been this way all the time. The automobile is going to take jobs away from people that work with horses, for example. Like you can even go back, say, that far. And I'm just kind of making something up off the cuff to be even older than, say, the assembly line. So Yeah, I like the idea of like just the broad soft skill of just being adaptable. I think yeah, I mean that's a key attribute anybody needs.
Yeah, and I don't know how you develop that or what the process is, but I've had the opportunity to speak with several graduate classes at different universities across the country, and it's a question that I get asked all the time. What's the most important skill I should be learning while I'm in university, at college? What should I be picking up? And that's really the number one thing that I talk to students about is being able to be uncomfortable, because especially if you're going to work in tech, which has a flow down effect of impacting so many different industries, but things are changing so quickly. I mean, if we just look in the analytics space, and we've talked about it a lot internally, is how do we keep up? It seems like there's a new technology coming on the market every week. The cloud vendors have done a phenomenal job in increasing their innovation rate. How do you keep up with just this one space? It's really difficult, but I think a big part of it is allowing yourself to be uncomfortable, because so many people get to a point where they feel like they've quote made it,
Mm-hmm.
and this is my path and I'm going to hang on to it. And if we draw parallels back to how we kicked off this conversation, if my whole career was to work out in the oil fields, and I reached a certain level of comfort and I've made it, then I become comfortable. And we see it in technology all the time. You learn a specific technology, you get to a certain level of accepted expertise, and I've made it. You no longer push yourself to learn new things, and that is at the most dangerous time. And again, especially in the space that we work in, because things are changing so quickly, that the number one thing that I tell students is figure out how to feel uncomfortable. And by that I mean that you'll never be comfortable that you've made it. There's never a destination where this is it, because you have to push yourself to continually be uncomfortable about picking up and learning new things.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think the types of jobs that are most uh, probably potentially impacted by automation and robots and that type of thing are those jobs which typically trying to trying to think how to word this without sounding very controversial, but the ones that generally are less knowledge industry types of jobs. I think it's more there's more service, more menial types of labor intensive jobs. I feel like those are the types of jobs that are probably most immediately in danger of getting replaced by technology versus knowledge worker type of jobs, which still require a lot of creativity generally and I think that aspect is probably one of the hardest things for AI to really get correct, the creative
I don't
aspect.
know. I'm actually going to debate you on that. I'm going to take the other side
Okay.
just because everything I'm reading about AI now,
Mm-hmm.
can the AI that exists today take over, say, like what you would consider like the white collar information, the information worker jobs, the consultant? No. Will it ever fully be able to? I don't think so, but I think there's certain aspects of, at least looking at, say, art industry specifically, I think there's certain aspects of things that we do that as they develop I think there is actually the distinct possibility that there's certain things we do that AI can take over.
I do think
Or at
eventually,
least
yeah.
or at least start to pare down, where maybe say you had three people running something, you just need one person versus three because several aspects of the job has been taken over by AI, and then you just have one person to make sure that things run smoothly. At least if the way they're talking about AI, the way it's going to become, I think that there may actually be the distinct possibility of it.
Yeah, no, I do think at one point in the future that um, AI should be able to surpass most every job potentially. But
Mm-hmm.
I just think that time is still a long ways away,
Mm-hmm.
basically. It has helped. I mean, I think what we've seen in our industry so far are there things that have helped many aspects of it. I think more. It feels like more on the data science side potentially. Not really the interpretation of the actual analysis that I've seen and the communication aspect. That is to me like more the creative side of analytics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think a lot of the things that we do is just sort of our normal processing. That can
Hmm.
take it, that will take over again. So it may not be like you have three people running something today and all three people are out of a job. It could be something where it's pared down to one person. The AI is able to automate so much of, say, what maybe two other people do that, yeah, you just have the one person. Yeah, it's definitely not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month. But the growth in AI that at least I've seen, at least I've been reading about, I think the distinct possibility of that happening sometime in the future is there.
Well, the amount of times that AI was mentioned at Adobe Summit this year, academically, it
Well,
must have
part
already
of it
taken
is a
over.
buzzword.
Yeah.
It does make an interesting dividing line. Looking at the topic for today being how do we develop transferable skills, it almost feels like we're drawing a line between hard and soft skills. That more of the
Mm-hmm.
time, the hard skills tend to be on the side of things that over time become more and more automated, and the soft skills are the things that are very difficult to automate and are the things that are more transferable. So if we look at our industry, let's say the implementation piece, let's talk about the act of just data cleansing, data preparation. If we go back in time, um, a lot of that has been automated, quote unquote, for us. So, if you look at what we get out of a Google Analytics or an Adobe Analytics, a lot of the data that we have accessible to us, we don't have to do the work. So, if an analyst back in the late 90s is looking at this and they're going to be like, well, what's an Omniture? What's a Google going to do? They're going to take my job because I spent 80% of my time preparing the data from these log files. It's right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last night I was playing around with some open data from the state of Utah, plotting parks, and I spent like 2 hours just cleaning the data and getting it into a format I could actually do something with it. Um, and so, again, like in this space, we've probably already seen that automation. We've seen that, a lot of that has been taken away. And again, it's this more of the hard skills, but the soft skills are harder to automate and transition. So as AI takes over, maybe more and more of the implementation aspects, more and more of the data preparation and cleansing aspects, it's going to be an opportunity for those soft skills as an architect, as an analyst, as someone actually building the systems that can be completely transferable.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of soft skills even, that we do that are not even interfacing with a computer. I mean,
Hmm.
I think of communication, evangelism, that side of things. In the foreseeable future, I don't see it changing that drastically. I mean, maybe I'm completely off base here, but yeah, no, I do think there's a yeah, I don't know. It's unless just the way that I mean businesses are really structured at a very deep level changes quite drastically.
No, and I don't think it is a drastic change. I think it's
Yeah,
It
one.
could be a slow change.
Yeah, it's one of those
yeah,
things where it changes and changes and changes, and then one day you wake up and you're like, "What the hell happened?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that's kind of the danger of it, is it lulls you into a sense of comfort that my job is never going to become obsolete. And again, that goes back to the advice that I'm giving these new college students that are coming into the market, is that never be comfortable with
complacent.
where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah, never be complacent, because it's so easy. To your point, it's not like tomorrow we wake up and a major vendor introduces something and all of a sudden like everything we knew is changed and we're out of job. It doesn't work that way. It's very slow, and it erodes and changes slowly until one day it's just boom, it's there. And maybe in that moment of time we're like, wow, that just happened overnight. But if you take a step back and look at the history, you're like, wow, this was like the slowest moving iceberg ever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're so focused on the day to day, it's hard to see that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's what. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's where, when I was thinking of this topic, one of the things I thought of is, say, that person who is very far along in their career. They've built a 20-year, 25-year career, so maybe they're in their mid to late 40s. And they've been doing this one thing for such a long time. And they necessarily weren't paying attention to those small little changes. So for them, yes, it was that change overnight. And because they weren't necessarily paying attention, they were just focused on what they did, and this is their bread and butter. This is where they made everything that they made all their money at. Now all of a sudden they're kind of like, what do I do now? Think of it this way. Let's use another sports analogy. Like, how many times do you hear these athletes? They're so focused in the now because that's when their career is. And granted, they know they have short careers. When they retire, how many athletes just like they kind of they have a trouble transitioning to retirement because either maybe an injury knocked them out a couple seasons early, or they were so focused on playing that all of a sudden they hit 37, 38 and are like, okay, maybe it is time to hang it up. And now it's like, what do I do now? So that's actually the kind of person I was thinking of, is that person who's, say, much further along in their career, and now all of a sudden they're faced with this change because they weren't necessarily attuned to the subtle changes in the industry that were happening. So yeah, looking at our industry specifically, I don't think that something's going to happen overnight, but if we don't pay attention to those changes, if we don't prepare ourselves, that eventually there is the possibility that even our jobs can be automated to a degree where what is incredibly high demand today, that demand could start to dry up.
No,
So
and it will,
yeah.
right? And if we look at the way that we do things, I think we could be a little bit more complacent and it'd be fine and have a little bit stress and a little less stress in how we operate. But that is one of my biggest fears, is that happening, and so that's why I tend to operate on a level of being uncomfortable all the time, because I don't want that to happen where we wake up one day and all of a sudden there's been a major shift and we've missed it. And without going too far off topic, it's something that concerned me from the very early days when I first started doing consulting. I noticed how dangerous it was to be a consultant 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if all of my energy was placed into doing direct client work, I had no energy to keep up with new technology, new things that were happening, and it scared me. And I saw it in every. This wasn't just one company. I saw it in every company that I worked for. I'm like, this is really, really dangerous. We're at the top of our game now, but something can change, and how are we going to keep up? And so it's one of the reasons why, with our specific model that we've deployed, one of the reasons why we chose to go down that path is I wanted to have that opportunity for us to constantly be learning. I don't want to be the guy out in the oil field that one day wakes up and all of the plants are closed down and we don't know what to do. And so giving ourselves time to really play around and understand what's happening in the market. It adds a lot of, I think, additional pressure and sometimes stress to what we do. But again, that's all by design to ensure that we're doing the best we can, to make sure that we're keeping up with the direction that the market is going.
Yeah, and actually, that's a good point, because the consultant is the prime example, especially in a very hot industry. And it's funny, just in general, whenever I hear someone talk about, oh man, times are great right now, that there's a ton of business, or it's the golden age of this particular space, I'm like, uh-oh, you're due for you're due for a roller coaster ride down a hill soon. Um, so let's drill into the consultant there for a second. Especially that consultant that, again, just focuses on the work of today. You had mentioned, I don't necessarily want you to repeat what you just said, but with that kind of person who is just focused on the now. What are some other recommendations other than say be uncomfortable or be aware of changes? What are maybe some changes in behavior that person can employ so they don't get stuck in that routine and 10 years goes by and all of a sudden there's this major shift that they weren't ready for?
Jeez, I don't know if there's a specific skill, but for me, the differentiator is a love of learning, a love of knowledge, and it's one of the things that scares me is there's such a anti higher education kind of pushback on education in general feel in the country and in the world right now. That's one of the biggest things that scares me in that college was an amazing experience for me, but the biggest thing that I walked away with was a desire and a framework for lifelong learning. And I think that there are so many people that lack that. And you get into a career, you get into a job, and to your point, and I think John said it, the word is complacent. You become complacent. It's like I've arrived. I've done all my schooling. There's this end point where I can quit learning and quit progressing now. And really that is the danger. And that's one of the biggest things that I think higher education instills in a lot of kids that go through the system is this just desire to continually be learning, continuing to grow. And I would say that if you've recognized that in yourself, that you've become stagnant and that your industry, your job is outpacing you, that is the biggest skill more than any other soft skills, any other hard skills, is developing a thirst for knowledge and continuing education, because that will almost ensure that you stay ahead of the wave.
Well, it's funny you talk about that. People talk about joking about that person who say peaked in high school or peaked in college. As a far off tangent here. Yeah, the other night I was flipping around the TV and The Breakfast Club was on. So I was watching that. Like I caught it in the middle. I was watching that for a little bit. And then I remembered a little while ago someone telling me like one of the little nuggets that they snuck in there is as the movie's opening and like they're panning around the school, you kind of see the plaque on the wall of like, the person of the year. And you come to find out later on, I think it's like the janitor. He was a student there. He was like the person of the year, peaked in high school. And had never left the school. So it's kind of an interesting topic there that he never really grew beyond the school. He peaked in high school, and and then that was it.
But I mean, how amazing were '80s movies? Probably
Oh
like
yeah, you can't beat
I
them.
mean, jeez. Okay, so we maybe need a future podcast discussing the best '80s movies of all time. Although there's a whole group of people, and we have certain employees at 33 Sticks that are on the younger side that have never seen some of the most classic '80s movies of all time, and it just makes me sad. I'm like, oh, best cheesy movies ever. And speaking of that, and like way side tangent, and I'll see if I can find the clip and load it up or have it linked up in the notes for this on the post. But have I mentioned how I've gone down these rabbit holes on YouTube of just watching certain things?
Yes.
So remember, I think we talked about the guy that was doing like stuff on the old '80s keyboards.
No, you never mentioned
Oh,
that.
all right. Well, from him, I jumped over to another guy that uses these little electronic keyboards to recreate like known beats and known songs. And he used this tiny little processor keyboard thing to recreate the theme song from Beverly Hills Cop. It was awesome.
Nice.
I got to quit going down these rabbit holes, but
Nice.
there's so much amazing stuff on YouTube. And last night I didn't go to bed until 1 o'clock because I found this amazing channel that breaks down how all these magicians on like America's Got Talent and Fool Penn and Teller do the tricks, and it's just mesmerizing to me. I'm like, there's just so much cool stuff on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
By design.
I guess. By design, but I don't know if they really did. Do you think they thought about it at the time, like how talented people were and how creative people were? We've had this whole industry where content had to be in these big production houses, and it's all of a sudden, your next door neighbor can create amazing content.
No, and it's completely you want to talk about disrupting an industry. Has that industry gone out of business? No, but it's definitely thrown several wrenches at them, and they've had to adjust to it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Um. All right. Sorry, I got us way
Um,
off topic.
so going back to you mentioned earlier on that I think we've definitely set a clear delineation between hard skills and soft skills, and we talk so far we've spent a lot of time talking about soft skills, and I think those soft skills help in the long term. They help you from becoming stagnant or complacent, and keep you aware of little industry changes that add up over time. To that, I think it's the hard skills too that can help. I think they are, say, maybe like more like the short term piece. If say like your industry is going through a contraction, you want to make a pivot to say an industry that's growing. You may not necessarily have industry experience, but there's certain skills that you have that could help you moving, say, from one industry to another. Any thoughts on like those kinds of hard skills, or that could be like a short term fix?
Jeez, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think there are definitely lots of hard skills that people can add and pivot to. And I think a lot of that comes from scarcity. I think we see that right now in just the development space. But I think that's a natural shift. So again, if we go back to this whole idea of the assembly line taking jobs away, it's also creating lots of jobs, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
creating the people that are actually building and designing the assembly lines and maintaining the assembly lines. And I think we see that right now in technology where, there's this fear that tech is taking people's jobs away, but it's creating lots of new jobs. And again, specifically in the development space for people to create the new assembly lines and maintain them. And we're seeing such a shortage in those creators. So I think from a hard skill perspective, people that can invest in skills that are building and maintaining the things that are automating our jobs seems like a no-brainer place to bet. Whether that's electronics or software development, AI, understanding how to build those software components. To me, that
Mm-hmm.
seems like a no-brainer place to invest from a hard skills perspective.
See, I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying, but I guess I'm taking a little bit of the less paranoid approach in a sense too. In the fact that I feel like when we talk about the state of things, we're talking about being in like the tech space and specifically like companies that are very advanced. But I feel like the majority of companies and industries around the world are way far behind in terms of getting to the point where AI might replace a lot of these knowledge jobs. Um, so I feel like another, I don't know if it's a skill or not, but strategy perhaps is to really spread out into other industries in a sense too, like less advanced industries. I mean, there's millions of companies that still are using paper file cabinets as an extreme example. So for those, I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot more of a runway before we get to a point where you know jobs in those industries are going to be replaced. I feel like maybe I'm
Yeah,
taking a very naive point of view
no,
to
no.
this
I mean,
conversation, but I'm just
so
thinking for people that are listening that are kind of really scared that their jobs are going to be replaced in the near future by machines. I just feel like there's certain strategies you can employ to probably safeguard your path for a while in a
Uh,
sense.
uh, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
So 2 points. One, I agree. I'm not going to name the company, but I've been to a company in the Midwest that if you walk into their offices, it's like you're walking into a time machine back to the 1960s. I'm like, this is what it must have felt like to work in corporate America in the 60s. It is the most bizarre thing that I've ever seen, and they make
Yeah.
billions of dollars. So yeah, I mean these things change very slowly. On the other hand, we are seeing absolute, fallout from change, and maybe not directly with automation or AI, but I continually kind of talk about the energy space because it's something that I see firsthand here in Utah, and specifically with people I know that are struggling, that work in industries and live in areas that are being drastically impacted by a reduction in jobs in the energy space, and specifically in Utah in coal and gas. I mean, it's a very, very real impact. So at some point in time, it does happen. So we're
Yeah,
talking about very kind of blue collarish type things, and leading into more white collar stuff. So perhaps the stuff that we're doing is further out in the future, but it will happen.
yeah,
I don't think we need to be paranoid about it by any means. And again, I don't think that this is anything new. We started off the conversation talking about this happened
totally.
before, it will happen again. So I think the biggest takeaway is just that it's not healthy to operate out of a state of fear or paranoia. But I think it is healthy to be off balance a bit, and be uncomfortable, never be complacent. I like the word complacent, to continually be learning and adding new skills. Ultimately that's going to be the protection, because we can't predict what's going to happen. As good as our machine learning and predictive analytics, like, we can't predict. Something massive could happen tomorrow that shifts the entire direction of everything we're doing. So it's that ability to be adaptable is what I think allows people to survive and thrive. And ultimately, humans are very adaptable creatures. That's why we've, I think, gotten to this point in evolution over the years, is that we've been able to adapt to the environment. And those that have the ability to adapt the most are the ones that are able to take advantage of new landscapes. But I agree with you, John. I don't think by any means a lot of the stuff that's being pushed down our throats and the narratives from a lot of the news outlets that AI is coming to take our jobs and it's going to take over and we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're all going to be out of jobs. I think that's kind of nonsense to sell clicks and eyeballs for advertising.
Yeah, I mean, tariffs and things are much more risk factors for job loss in the current
Absolutely.
state of things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm no meant no in no way meant for this to kind of be falling in with that fear mongering narrative you're hearing all over the place. It's just again, it's just something that seems to crop up, and when it does happen or it feels like there's been a major shift again, it's been one of these slow creeps, and the people who were caught off guard were necessarily either not aware of it, whether it's through them or somebody else kept them blind to it. So how do you keep that? And yes, like I feel like the minute you start to get comfortable, that's when you could be taken advantage of by something like that. So again, yeah, not meant to be a fear mongering kind of conversation. I
Yeah, yeah.
didn't want to
No.
fall into
Yeah,
that.
No.
but yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, in terms of adaptability, I definitely agree. And just kind of, I think in along the same lines of that, it's really just having an understanding of things beyond your specific scope. I mean, I think that just
Mm-hmm.
helps you to adapt to other angles to what to leverage your skills in different directions
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But by the way, so going back to how we started this off, I posted a link to an article about the grocery store chain, the one local to me, that is adding the little robots. And if you click on it, you'll see a picture of the robot that just walks up and down the aisles, or technically rolls.
Did it mention in the article, did anyone lose their jobs because of that robot? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. It has eyeballs.
It has eyeballs, yeah.
I wonder. It's probably sensors, right? Or is it just for looks?
Well, no, the eyeballs, they're just like googly eyes they put on there to give it some kind of face. But there's a sensor on it that again, it's kind of scanning the floor, looking for spills or stuff that needs to be cleaned up.
Interesting. I mean, it happens, right? I can't remember where I saw it, but I was watching a little mini documentary on the future of convenience stores, and I want to say it's somewhere in Europe that there's this convenience store that doesn't have any employees in the customer facing area of the store. You go in there and you interface with some kind of technology. These robots go into the back, put your order together, and it comes out and gives you what you purchased, all packaged up and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an extreme example, but I mean, it does happen, right? Like, so I think it's scary to say that like these things don't happen. But to John's point, it's not like we're gonna wake up tomorrow and it's a completely different landscape. But I think that kind of helps support my point, is that it could be easy to be lulled into a sense of comfort because it is
Well,
such a slow moving
The,
change.
the other side of that though is that progress is probably not a linear line. It's probably an exponential line. So the progress will probably pick up as we go along as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But there are a lot of, like, in the case of your example of this automated grocery store. I don't know about it, but I just imagine, yeah, maybe the side of packaging the order, presenting it might be automated. But what about making the actual order process? I imagine
Right.
there's still probably people
No,
that
for
require help. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
for
that.
for for sure, and I think that kind of speaks to my point, is that if you look at the things that are being put in place to help automate, that to me is an easy path to follow of where the jobs are going, because those
Yeah,
things need people
they're
to
shifting.
create. Yeah, that's where the jobs are going. So if you're able to shift and pay attention to those trends, then it's not that jobs are being taken, it's just that they're shifting, and that
mm-hmm.
makes sense. We
Yep.
we we don't we don't need a lot of people in the downtown shop fixing soles on shoes, anymore. There's like lots of old jobs that have gone out, and we could say, well, that's a horrible thing, and someone lost their job, but it's just shifted to something else. And in a lot of cases, created more jobs than ended up being taken away. And there's a book I'm reading that's kind of making that argument, kind of a counter argument to automation and outsourcing, that's taking away. It's specifically looking at the United States, that it's taking away Americans' jobs because we're outsourcing this work to Mexico or to Eastern Europe, and that's not fair because we're taking American jobs away. But these economists are arguing the net of it is that it actually ends up creating more jobs. Not as only does it create more white collar, higher paying jobs, but it also creates more support jobs that support those higher paying jobs in the services space.
Mm-hmm.
So, we can cling on to what we've known and kind of play a victim, saying that our jobs are being stolen and taken away from us. But I think that doesn't get us anywhere. It may make us feel good that we can play that victim role, but ultimately, um, if you believe that technology is creating more opportunity, that there's more opportunity for all of us. We just have to be open to that idea. And again, I think that scares a lot of people, because a lot of people get into a certain career or path in life, and they've said that that's what I'm going to do. That defines who I am, and I'm not going to change from that. And I think that is the scary part. If you're open to following the direction and the waves that the new technology is creating, there's always going to be opportunity and new opportunities for employment. And looking at this picture, it makes me miss working in the grocery store. That was fun.
I think back to a couple jobs I had in high school and college, and what we uh, what we got away with, in the late '90s was amazing. I mean, nothing illicit or illegal, but just stuff that like it with what you would have today with just like red tape. They wouldn't let you do it.
For
Like
sure.
I can say it now because the company pretty much it still exists, but not necessarily the way it did. I worked. In college, I worked for Gateway Computers.
Uh huh.
When they actually had the stores, you would go into the store, and the solution expert would be there and help you customize your computer. You build it out, pay for it, and then it would arrive like a week later. So the LAN games were starting to become like the multiplayer LAN games were starting to become big. I think Xbox had just come out, but anyway, we installed a couple of multiplayer demos on the machines, kind of in the background. So when we would close the store, we'd all hang out and play for like an hour and a half, just playing the multiplayer first-person shooter games on the computers, and it was a ton of fun. Something you couldn't do today
No.
in any kind of store.
And I didn't work in a technology store, so we had to have a little bit more manual fun. So, man, is that loud computer noise? So one of the fun things that we did at night, or one of our responsibilities, was to make bales. So we had this baler in the back. So all of the
Oh dear God!
no, it's nothing crazy. But so all of the groceries come in these big cardboard boxes off the trucks, and then you load it into the inventory room in the back, and then you have all of these cardboard boxes left over. And we had this big machine called a baler that you would shove the boxes in. It would smash it up, and then it would wrap it with wire and make a bale, like a bale of hay, but a bale of cardboard. And then we would load it up on a pallet jack, and we had a ramp that went into the back parking lot, and we would see how far we could ride that bale out into the parking lot.
Fun!
Nice.
It was a good time.
Did you ever make a fort with them?
We did, and that was probably the closest time we got to being caught, is because we made a fort out in the store itself, and this was late at night, and we would put a person inside the fort. And as people would walk down the aisle, they would like shift the fort a little bit, and people would freak out. Looking back on it, if we had iPhones and YouTube back then, we could have had an awesome channel.
That would have been awesome. You would have your own TV show scaring people.
We would.
Like,
it would probably be on True TV.
Exactly. It would be leading into the Impractical Jokers.
Yeah. Man, just born in the wrong decade, but got to enjoy all those 80s shows.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, I will try to find a way to integrate 80s movies into one of our fun episodes coming up.
I love me a good 80s movie. I mean, just the music. My favorite is, I don't know if there's been a genre since the 80s that has used music and the montage as well as the 80s movies. Like Revenge of the Nerds, they're cleaning up the broken down house. This music's playing, and then you have the montage of all this stuff happen. Just classic cinema.
Yeah.
John's
stuff.
like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Cool. Well, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, no, this was really, really good. We actually had some debate this time, which was great.
And we got going. We started off with some low energy here, but
our podcasts are marathons, not sprints. We don't, we're not hitting full speed right out of the gate.
No, that's fair enough.
That's good.
But I will say, I think there was a couple things John said that gives me a great cold open for this episode. So when I go and edit it, just like Israel, that's stupid. Opening from a couple of weeks.
I always have some weird line.
Such a great.
I have no filter.
So, all right, guys. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up for now, and I'll catch you both later.
All right, sounds good.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to reach us, you could do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at www.33sticks.com. The 33 Tangents podcast is a production of 33 Sticks.